Hey friends, welcome back to Grand Adventure. I'm your host, Mark Guido, and we are camped here on the world famous Cabot Trail on beautiful Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia. We're gonna bring you all around Cape Breton Island in this episode and even share with you a situation that prompted us to simply up and leave another campground. So stay tuned. Cape Breton Island's scenic beauty is composed of rocky shores, rolling farmland, glacial valleys, barren headlands, highlands, woods, and plateaus. With nearly 4,000 square miles, the island accounts for more than 18% of Nova Scotia's total landmass. Although Cape Breton Island is separated from the Nova Scotia Peninsula by the Strait of Canso, the two have been physically connected by the Canso Causeway since 1955. The island's land gradually slopes upwards until reaching the Cape Breton Highlands at its northern end, where flat-topped tableland mountains that constitute an extension of the Appalachians rise as high as 1,750 feet above the ocean below. 132,000 people call Cape Breton Island home, with the vast majority residing along its coastline. Europeans arrived here as early as the 1520s, when Portuguese fishermen established a fishing colony on the island, and were followed by Scots and the French. Gaelic culture remains strong here to this day, and while English is now the primary language, Scottish Gaelic and Acadian French are still spoken in some small communities. The island's signature Cabot Trail is a 185-mile loop around the northern tip of the island, passing through the Cape Breton Highlands and its namesake National Park of Canada. It is named after the explorer John Cabot, who landed in Atlantic Canada in 1497, although modern historians agree his landfall likely took place in Newfoundland and not Cape Breton Island. Construction of the initial route was completed in 1932. booked a week at Hideaway Campground near Cape Breton Island's northern tip, but only stayed one night. In 7 years of RV travel, this is the first time that we've ever left a campground early because of its mismanagement. It all started right at check-in, which was hardly warm and fuzzy, and only escalated when our site said at the time of booking to be capable of holding our 33-foot fifth wheel was only half as long and felt like it was situated in a reclaimed rock quarry. At the end of a row, with nowhere to turn around, I had no option but to back our trailer down the road's entire length just to get into our site. I was also not enamored by the fact that our power pedestal required a direct connection, as it wasn't fitted with any kind of circuit breaker. Nevertheless, I could have dealt with these issues. I should also note that the upper part of the campground is far more attractive than the part where we were placed, and has sweeping ocean vistas from its sites. My problem was with the campground's owner, who appeared early on the first morning to complain about having 2 vehicles at our site. Even though we were parked where we obstructed no one, I acknowledged that a limit of 1 vehicle at each campsite is in their rules, and agreed to move 1 vehicle over to the office parking lot once I changed out of my morning bathrobe. However, the owner returned no more than 15 minutes later to see why I hadn't yet moved the vehicle. This was overbearing. I assured him that I was about to go for a hike, which would be the end of the problem. But that's when he pointed to my drone. He said that flying a drone above his campground was against the rules, even though he couldn't point to that in the extensive written list of rules provided at check-in. He then attempted to assert that it's illegal, which I promptly and firmly corrected with an education on aircraft regulations. I pointed out that he's entirely within his rights to prevent me from taking off or landing on his property, but otherwise, he can no more regulate a drone flying in the airspace above his land than he can a manned aircraft flying overhead if I take off and land elsewhere, as near as 100 feet away on the public roadway. He then asked if I could see him giving me the finger as I was flying overhead. That was the final straw. Some people have no business being in the hospitality industry, and Alex Dunphy is one of them. So instead of hiking, we simply packed up and left. I lost a non-refundable $300 in the process, but principle remains more important to me than money. We landed instead an hour south at Waves End Campground, outside of the village of Cheticamp, where we were welcomed with open arms. Our 30-amp water and electric site here costs $55 Canadian per night plus tax, or $40.70 US at today's exchange rate. There's a dump station available adjacent to the office. Not only are the campground's bath facilities positively immaculate, but its interior, constructed of cedar, feels like a Swedish sauna. I couldn't help but compare our experience here to that of Hideaway Campground, or that of our last stop on Prince Edward Island, where we actually enjoyed spending time socializing with the campground owners. Alex Dunphy may have taken my money, but he'll never take my pride. When we come right back, following a quick ad break, we'll explore the towns of this western coast of Cape Breton Island and bring you hiking on one of the national park's most popular trails. So stay tuned. This part of the Cabot Trail surrounding our campground along Cape Breton Island's western coast is an enclave of Acadian settlement and culture. In fact, Cheticamp makes up the largest Francophone enclave on Cape Breton Island. The name of Jersey native Charles Robin has appeared repeatedly throughout our travels in Atlantic Canada, and Cheticamp is no exception, as he opened a seasonal fishing station here in the 18th century. In the years following the Great Expulsion, many Acadians came to this area. Settlement was formally established in 1785 by a grant of land to 14 original settlers. Today, Cheticamp, which is at the entrance of the Cape Breton Highlands National Park, is a popular tourist spot, and apart from an important gypsum mine, which operated off and on until the Second World War, the main industry in Cheticamp historically has been fishing for groundfish, as well as lobster and crab. An hour's drive south of Cheticamp on the island's west coast, Inverness is the place to go to combine a beach vacation with golf, although the town also sits astride a small coal seam, which was exploited from the late 19th century to the mid-late 20th century. William Penn Hussey of Massachusetts industrialized the town's coal operations. After Hussey was able to secure financial backing from European investors, he dredged a portion of the sand dunes to connect McIsaac's Pond to the Gulf of St. Lawrence. He had some piers and wharves built, laid a small railway, and was able to ship coal to export markets. Mine shafts once entered the ground where this golf course is today, and actually extended out to sea beneath the ocean floor. Many of these mines closed following World War II, with the last one closing in 2001. Most folks come to Cape Breton Island to visit the Highlands, and we'll get a good taste of it today by hiking up there atop a portion of 1,631-foot French Mountain. The Skyline Trail was one of the most popular hikes within Cape Breton Highlands National Park, and its gargantuan parking lot fills up quickly on busy days, when hikers may number over 1,000. This easy trail covers 4 miles out and back, and may be extended by making a loop out of it in combination with an adjacent trail. Zoe had to stay home today, for no dogs are allowed. It's mostly a carefully prepared gravel surface, and I've even seen parents pushing baby strollers. The trail is every bit as busy as the parking lot would indicate, and today is a Tuesday. I'd hate to see this place on a Saturday. Near the midway point, you'll enter through this gate in a moose enclosure. But unlike what its name would suggest, this isn't meant to keep moose in. It's designed to keep them out, to allow the forest an opportunity to revegetate. This is also where you begin a gradual descent to the overlook. The northern boreal forest along the Skyline Trail is positively gorgeous. In addition to moose, bald eagles, bears, and numerous boreal birds live in this habitat. Once you've reached this boardwalk across a small wetland, you're nearly there. This final boardwalk at the tip of the headland is why you came here. Views stretch across the Cabot Trail and the Gulf of St. Lawrence, where you may be lucky enough to spot whales below. Keep pressing on to the end of the boardwalk, for if you're lucky, all of the others have already turned around, and you'll have this scenic viewpoint to yourself. Of course, if you walked all the way to the end, you now have to walk all the way back up. I covered 4 miles with 390 feet of total elevation gain today in 86 minutes round trip. Your mileage may vary. When we come right back, following another quick ad break to pay the bills, we'll visit the island communities of Baddeck, Sydney, and Louisburg, along with the sprawling 18th century fortress of Louisburg. So stay tuned. After huddling in the camper through 3 straight days of thick clouds and rain, I've got a serious case of cabin fever. I'm hoping to find better weather today, 2.5 hours away on Cape Breton Island's eastern shoreline. Baddock is a community on Cape Breton Island's eastern shore that was first settled by United Empire Loyalists in the late 18th century and prospered in the 19th century with mining, milling, and shipbuilding. Today, it's a center of the island's tourism industry. In 1885, the Alexander Graham Bell family had a vacation in Baddock. He then built a complex of buildings, including a new laboratory. Initially a summer residence, Bell spent an increasing part of the year there and conducted many experiments, including the AEA Silver Dart's first controlled-powered flight in Canada in 1909. From 1885 to 1928, the estate included the Bell Boatyard, which made both experimental and traditional boats. Bell's compound in Baddock is today the Alexander Graham Bell National Historic Site, a unit of Parks Canada, which contains the largest repository of artifacts and documents from Bell's years of experimental work in Baddock. The city of Sydney, now the island's largest community with over 30,000 residents, served as Cape Breton Island's colonial capital until 1820. When the colony merged with Nova Scotia and the capital moved to Halifax. Industry in Sydney centered on coal extraction until just after the turn of the 20th century, when the city became home to one of North America's main steel mills, which sat right on this property, that aside from a new city park, remains largely vacant following cleanup efforts. During both the First and Second World Wars, this was a major staging area for England-bound convoys. Sydney's coal shipping and steel manufacturing made a significant contribution to the Allied war effort. The post-war period witnessed a major decline in the number of people employed at the Dominion Steel and Coal Corporation steel mill, and the Nova Scotia and Canadian governments had to nationalize it in 1967 to save the region's biggest employer. The city's population has steadily decreased since the early 1970s, due to the downward fortunes of the plant, which finally closed for good in 2001. North Sydney is the departure point for massive ocean-going ferries, like the 518-foot motor vessel Leif Erikson that transport people, vehicles, and goods to Newfoundland, that province's only link to the rest of Canada. We didn't travel 2.5 hours each way to see Sydney, or even Baddock. We're here for the Fortress of Louisbourg. The Fortress of Louisbourg National Historic Site, operated by Parks Canada, is a one-quarter partial reconstruction of an 18th century French fortress. Its two sieges, especially that of 1758, were turning points in the Anglo-French struggle for what today is Canada. After parking at the visitor center, guests board a shuttle bus for the short ride to the fortress. The original settlement was founded in 1713 by settlers from Newfoundland and was initially called Havre-à-Langlois, when Cape Breton Island was known as Ile Royale. The fort was built to protect and provide a base for France's lucrative North American cod fishery on the Grand Banks, and to protect Quebec City from British invasions. Of the 4 entrances to the fortress, the reconstructed Dauphin Gate was the busiest. The location for the fortress was chosen because it was easy to defend against British ships attempting to either block or attack the St. Lawrence River, at the time the only way to get goods to Canada and its cities of Quebec and Montreal. The fishing port grew to become the third busiest commercial port in North America after Boston and Philadelphia, with a population numbering over 4,000, and the fortifications eventually surrounded the town. By the mid-1740s, Louisburg was one of the most extensive and expensive European fortifications constructed in North America. The fortress was captured by British colonists in 1745 and was a major bargaining chip in the negotiations leading to the 1748 treaty ending the War of the Austrian Succession. It was returned to the French in exchange for border towns in what is today Belgium. It was captured again in 1758 by British forces in the 7 Years' War, better known in the United States as the French and Indian War, after which its fortifications were systematically destroyed by British engineers. Despite its destruction, the site was never resettled, leaving ruins of the fortress and town largely undisturbed for archaeologists to unearth and reconstruct as it would have looked in 1744. That project started in 1961 and continued into the 1970s, providing jobs for unemployed coal miners from the Sydney area. Many of the workers learned 18th century French masonry techniques and other skills to create an accurate replica. Additional restoration was completed in 2018 to 2020, and again in 2022 to 2023 after Hurricane Fiona. Today, it's a living history museum that stands as the largest reconstruction project ever completed in North America. This was the elaborately appointed governor's residence. fortress of Louisburg sits right across the harbor from its namesake town. After the fortress's abandonment, English settlers built a small fishing village across the harbor. The village grew slowly with additional loyalist settlers in the 1780s. The arrival of Sydney and Louisburg Railway in 1894 brought heavy volumes of winter coal exports to Louisburg Harbor's ice-free waters as a winter coal port. The harbor was also used by the Canadian government ship Montmagny in 1912 to lay in bodies from the sinking of the RMS Titanic. In 1913, the Marconi Company established a transatlantic radio transmitting station here. Louisburg's economy is today dominated by the seasonal tourism industry and seafood processing. It turned out to be a beautiful day on Cape Breton Island after all, but it's time for us to get back to camp, to pack up to move to our next destination on the Nova Scotia Peninsula's South Shore. We hope that you've enjoyed visiting beautiful Cape Breton Island with us. If you liked this episode, it is extremely important to us that you give us a big thumbs up down below. And while you're down below, that's where you're going to find the comment section, which is where we'd love to hear from you after each and every grand adventure, which we premiere right here every Wednesday evening. We'd be honored if you shared the channel with your friends, family, and on social media. But if you're not yet a grand adventurer yourself, coming up next week, we're going to bring you to Graves Island Provincial Park on the South Shore of Nova Scotia. So now is the perfect time. I don't know what you're waiting for. Go smash that little subscribe button right down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and ring that notification bell to be sure that you never miss a grand adventure. So until next Wednesday from Graves Island, Nova Scotia, please remember, life is nothing but a grand adventure. We'll see you then.